They shall grow not old as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them.
D-Day itself as such was rough, but that sort of way it was partly a dream to me. The next day wasn't a dream.
We were all young, and to us it was an experience. I said to myself on the first day, if this is going to be war, this is great. But unfortunately, it wasn't. It changed that night.
We'd never been in battle, so we imagined ourselves as John Waynes or somebody like that. We're going to storm the place and take it all ourselves. But when it comes to the real thing, your whole attitudes change. All of a sudden you found yourself men overnight.
Terrible, scared, not knowing what was going to happen.
You never know for 1 minute the next way you're going to live or die.
I could hear the squeals of some men who were hit. To this very day, I can hear them.
Any of those men that went in on those actions that I took part in, as far as I'm concerned, they were all heroes. All heroes.
In preparation for the Allied invasion of France, by 1944 the German forces had built a formidable line of defense along the coast of northern France. Constructed by Field Marshal Rommel, it was Adolf Hitler's Atlantic Wall. Stationed in the south of England, men from the Royal Ulster Rifles prepared to take on Hitler's forces and to take part in the biggest military invasion in history.
They were all ordinary fellas. There was none of them put-ons or upstarts or anything like that. All run-of-the-mill fellas. Some of them were farmers, some of them were unemployed like myself. There was fellas from down south, there was fellas from Derry, there was fellas from Belfast, there's fellas from all over Northern Ireland, more or less.
Isolated from their family and friends, the Royal Ulster Rifles were moved to top-secret transit camps to make final preparations for D-Day.
The transit camp was like everywhere else, an army camp. You weren't allowed out. We were confined mostly to our own tents. The canteen was open, and that was that.
As D-Day approached, an unexpected visitor arrived to boost the men's morale.
They said somebody coming to, never said who it was, you know. And then we got there, and they says, mate, now all the tall people to get to the back, and the short ones get to the front. And then there was a platform, and then it's just jeep trouble. And then Hill Marshal Montgomery come on top.
He was our hero. He inspired us. He gave us that courage to go forward, and we looked up to him.
On the eve of this great adventure, to us is given the honour of striking a blow for freedom.
We were looking under his feet, and he was looking down on us, you see. We were looking up at him. He just told us just to be brave and do what we had to do. And our objective was, he says, if we get our objectives on the beach on D-Day, we've done a good job.
And with enthusiasm for the contest, let us go forward to victory.
He says to me, where do you come from? I say, sir, I come from Northern Ireland. He says, then you're an Ulster man. I say, yes, sir. He says, if I can't get anybody to fight with, we'll fight among ourselves. That's the word. As it's true, I'll never forget that, never.
Finally, in the first week of June 1944, the soldiers were mobilized for the invasion of France. The countdown to D-Day was almost complete.
This is it. You'd have heard somebody saying, this is it. This is the big scheme.
It was funny going through some villages, you know. People who want us to thought, there's boys out on exercise again. They had no idea, like we were on our way to France, you know.
We were fit, we were young soldiers, and we couldn't wait to get into action.
The men from the 2nd Battalion Royal Ulster Rifles began their overnight journey to the beaches of Normandy. But it was men from the Antrim Parachute Squadron who were among the first to land in France. They were dropped behind German lines several hours before the beach invasions.
We were taken off at 11 o'clock at night on the 5th of June. If anybody's scared, they weren't really showing it, you know, because they were so worked up about what they were doing. They hadn't time to feel scared, you know. We'd been training for months and months to say, and we just hadn't time to feel scared. One lad I knew well, a bit younger than me, came to me, he says, Jimmy, I think I'm going to be killed. I said, what? Everybody could be killed here. One shell, that'll you and I together, we're blown to bits. Don't think about that at all. He said, I said, I got a premonition. 3 days later, he was killed. He and 2 other fellows, 3 of them, one mortar bomb got the 3 of them. 3 nice lads. You got to concentrate on landing. Don't land with one leg in the air or head first or that. Make sure you're in position, feet together and knees bent, and as you hit the ground, roll. When I landed on my own. Didn't know where the hell it was. Lo and behold, there was a signpost. I couldn't believe it. The Germans, I was told by the French later, that they left all the signposts up so that they could find their way around, because they were in a strange country. So once I saw that, from my memory of the maps and where everything, I knew exactly where it was.
Having landed behind enemy lines during the early hours of D-Day, Jimmy Bowden and his comrades had to prepare the way for the airborne invasion.
The objective was to blow up holes to make a runway for the gliders coming in. And it was imperative we got those done before 3 o'clock. The general said he was coming in at 3 o'clock, no matter what. So we decided we have to get those poles down.
Meanwhile, the troops at sea were on their way towards the coast of Normandy, towards the beaches, codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword.
On the way over, it began to get very, very rough, and the ship was bobbing up and down because they were flat bottom.
A lot of them was sick, because you never used to the sea, because we was on land all the time. That's why everybody was silent, kept quiet, never said nothing. There's nothing to talk about, only what's going to happen, going there, what they're going to expect.
We were told we could write a letter home, but it wouldn't be posted till after the D-Day Latins. And writing these letters was a bit sad. It was sad for me because I can remember this day writing to my mother and telling her how much I love her and telling the family and all. Things that I should have told them when I was living and in amongst them. What was going through my mind at that moment was, in the First World War, my grandmother had lost her son, and I couldn't help thinking of that. Would I be one of the ones, and how would my mother take it, and how would she feel? And I had said in the letter that if anything happened to me, I hope she would go on in life the way she always done, with a nice good smile on her face, and remember that I was only one of thousands, and just be proud that her son had died for his country.
As their comrades neared the Normandy beaches, back in England, the men of the 1st Battalion Royal Ulster Rifles were about to leave for France.
We weren't told anything. We weren't told anything at all. We were brought out on the airfield. The gliders were lined up, and each company was given the glider.
This was the day that we've been trained for, and not enough people are a bit tense, you know what I mean, first time going into action and the glider, and knowing that you're going to get hit with flak and not knowing if there's going to be planes come at you or whatever. So it was scary at the time, you know.
Inside each glider, a platoon of up to 30 men prepared for the hazardous journey into enemy territory.
Your gliders take to the air. Right? You and I are on a glider. We have no chutes. We're in a plywood coffin. That's what the boys used to call it.
The portholes in it are cellophane. You can stick your finger through them. And if you sit down hard on the seat, you'd have been through it.
Like paper, you could near blow through them, and you're always worried. No, the way they were built, they could have fell in two halves, you know.
I would say it's a death trap.
The men were quiet. You get the odd one making a wee sickly joke. And what was going through my officer's mind, he was probably saying, here, what am I going to do when I get ashore here? How are these boys going to perform? All those sort of things. Truthfully, like, I joined up knowing there was a war on for a start. I knew at some time or other that I was going to have to go into action. So it really did, I have to be honest, it didn't really annoy me, no, you know. Not really, you know. Because I accept, actually, it was a bit of excitement more than anything, you know.
We were flying over the channel, and I happened to look out. I just didn't look out. I just seen the put all those big ships and all was down below, and the sea was bumbling up.
All I could see was ships. But I was thinking, well, at least there's a load more going over here. We're all right. That's all I could think of. It looked impressive. There's no two ways about it.
The air was just covered with aircraft of every description, bombers, gliders, the airborne going over, the parachuters going over. And it was a tremendous feeling, and you had just such support to see all that overhead and all that around you. You felt almost that nothing could touch you.
As the airborne troops flew overhead, the men of the 2nd Battalion Royal Ulster Rifles were about to go into action on Sword Beach. The furious battle to liberate Europe was underway.
When we got about maybe half a mile out, we could see the rest of the brigades. They were in front of us. It was just a whole crowd in front, like a big triangle.
When we come in near the beach, the ship that I was on sat down in about 8 feet of water. Now 8 feet of water is enough to drown any man with 56 pound of gear and a Bren gun and a bicycle and all that. You would go down to Davies Jones' locker and you wouldn't raise too easy.
Nobody was going to get in that water. You had all your equipment, and then you had a bicycle, one arm, and some people had brain guns and mortars, all on their shoulder, and picks and shovels.
Every single man from the CO down had a bicycle. I made the decision when I was on the boat that I couldn't get off with all that weight. So I just lifted the bicycle, threw it over the side, and that was a wee bit later, left me with my Bren gun and my gear.
Got my rifle, wrapped my sling around the handlebar, put the butt onto the seat, hoisted it onto my shoulder and held onto the rifle so that it wouldn't come off and into the water. That left that hand free. And I just walked down the ramp and into the water.
I put the rope underneath my arm and I held the Bren gun. I used to call it Betsy, and it wasn't any name of girlfriend or anything. It's just a habit I had. I had it over my shoulder and it says, "Betsy, you're going to get baptized."
There was a great swell on the water, and whenever it would come in on your back, it was pushing you forward, and whenever it was coming back out again, it was catching you and pulling you back again.
The water was just splashing right over your head, splashing everywhere. I was actually up to my neck holding onto the rope.
You were maybe standing there holding on, and sniper, maybe machine gun fire, anything like that.
As we made our way in, there was a large quantity of shells, mortar fire, all falling on the beach. And there's these houses, and there was German snipers and people like that in them. And then there was, of course, in the background, there was the artillery fire and the mortar fire all landing on the beach.
What I was doing was get off, because you could see every now and again shell fire landing, and it was just a matter of get off.
We quickly made our way up to the place called, just offshore, Lansamere. We got there, which was the assembly point.
After flying over Sword Beach and the River Orne, the 1st Battalion Royal Ulster Rifles landed south of the village of Ranville.
It was up to the pilot to get you to the destination that you want. Taking into account when in the France I had spikes and everything up in the fields and that.
And sure enough, the gliders came in over our heads, over the wood. It must have been their mark coming in, was the wood, that they came right over our heads and landed.
Underneath the glider is a chute. The glider is supposed to land in that chute, and it's supposed to land flat. But it doesn't, the fields and the hedgerows, they couldn't. So the one we were in, the chute hit the hedgerow and we just turned up. And we were all thrown from the back of the glider to the front of the glider, on top of the pilots.
All of a sudden, if you're at the back of the glider, you can hear the crunch. You have then got to get some of the men out, forming defensive position all around the glider, and then taking part in the whole linking up in the particular D-Day operation. We formed up to attack.
Bro! Up this way, up this way!
Out of all the dust and dirt and all, came these fellas running, and had Vickers machine guns. They could run past us and shouting, and we knew they were Ulster rifles all right, and they were going into action.
Let's go! The village of Longville and Ranville, this is our main object when we landed, was to go down, land and secure them two villages, which we did.
After their successful D-Day landings, the men dug in for their first night in the battlefield.
Of course, I thought I was doing a smart thing on the boat. I put a pair of socks into my mess tin. Says I'll have a pair of dry socks. So whenever we dug in for the night, we always dug our trench, pair of us, and we always dug a hole in the side wall of the trench. And we were able to drop a tea in that, because we had the equipment for doing that, our hardtack as they called it. And I took my mess tin out and went to take my socks out. they were hanging, so I had no need to change my socks. So I just hung the ones that I had on up on a bit of a hedge at the back of us to let them dry out.
But for the young soldiers, the reality of war began to hit home as darkness fell on D-Day.
Everything was all right until night time. It was very frightening, very scary, because it was on my own in a foreign country. Just realising that war was different when I thought when we were landing. Completely different.
Scared, not knowing what was going to happen. Nobody knew who was here. We didn't know who was who, you know, because we didn't know who got off the craft and who didn't. All you knew, all you were interested in was your own section, your own platoon.
The one I was in was one of my mates, and he was on guard. And I come over, they started firing the 88mm. And unfortunately, I wanted my mum. But my mum was dead, and I'm not afraid to admit it. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one. The captain come along, and he said to me, "You all right, McConnell?" And I said, "No, I want my mum." So he just shook me, and he just touched me in the chin with his back of his hand. Brought me round to reality. Brought back my senses again, let's put it that way.
I felt a bit brighter. The dawn, I'm sure everybody was the same as me. When the dawn come, you could give it a clap.
The city of Caen was the German stronghold in Normandy. But for the Allies, it was the gateway to Paris. After his traumatic night, Bill McConnell and a small group of men were selected to travel undercover to Caen on a dangerous but vital mission.
We got orders to find out the strength of the German army because, again, they were told there was very little. And we got picked up by a Mackie, one of the French resistance. An old civilian truck with the French came and took us up. When we got there, there was a garrison there, and that's some soldiers, I can assure you. It was just outside the fort, where the Germans were very, very, there was thousands of them there. We were standing at the bottom of that fort, but not for long. Captain Martin was away, we thought we'd lost him. He'd been taken because he was away for about half an hour. And we had to stand and hide there when the Germans were walking up and down the blinking road. I'd never seen the Germans in reality before, but I was in their midst, walking amongst them. And if we had been caught, well, that was it. But we knew the consequences. Apparently we were to go in to take Caen. I'm glad we didn't have to go in to try and take it that morning. And that night we'd been slaughtered.
It was decided that the men of 2nd Battalion who had landed at Sword Beach would advance toward Caen. But first, they had to capture Combe Wood.
The information they got that the main entrance to Caen wasn't heavily defended, and that was Combes.
The Germans were supposed to be there, and that was the first attack we were making on the way to Caen.
When we were advancing across there, it was very, very heavy corn, a thick corn, and it was up above our waist.
It must have been about 1,500 yards across that field, and there was shelling and mortaring going on and all the rest of it.
We advanced with calmness and steadiness and kept the line all the way up.
We were told then we were attacking and we could see a hedge, and then whenever you got across the hedge and then you saw the wall, and it was 10 foot high. You had no chance of getting over that.
We had no scaling gear. We were told nothing about climbing over walls or anything. And when they'd done our reconnaissance on it, they couldn't see very well to see what was inside and what was happening. So they didn't know really what they were up against. Whether it was a shell of our own or what had hit the wall, there was a big U-shaped hole in the wall.
The gap will always be in my mind. And the thing that always hits me is, "Will you come into my parlour?" said the spider to the fly. Because it was just looked like an invitation in, but you weren't going to get out. And whenever you went into the woods, you were just met with tree after tree. You were more or less dodging around the trees to move along. And whenever you got down then, you were crawling around them. But when we got in about, I would say a good 3/4 of the way into that wood to the left, the machine gun in front, it opened up, and the machine gun to the left opened up.
They had a retreat, leaving a lot of their dead behind. Their company commander was killed, and some of our own lads was left behind in that wood.
In their first experience of close combat, the men had suffered serious casualties. But they were determined to capture Combe Wood and went into battle once again.
They made a second attack across the same cornfield, and the shelling was heavier on this occasion. But I kept going on anyway, and the next thing, about, I would say it wouldn't be any more than 6 or 8 yards from me, seen this thing land and explode, and the next thing. I had got it. There was a ditch, so I went in there, and 2 stretcher bearers came in.
A serious shrapnel wound to his right shoulder had brought Richard Keegan's war in Normandy to an end. But for Richard's comrades, the worst was yet to come in the battle for Combe Wood.
We were right up through that wood till we got up to a big farmhouse. And then when we got to the farmhouse, we took up position. And for 5 solid hours, we were mortared and shelled.
Five hours, non-stop, mortar bomb, mortars. We were lying there with the legs blown off and things like that there. No trenches, just what the enemy had dug.
We lost a tremendous number of men, somewhere near 200, are wounded or killed. And that is a powerful lot out of a battalion was wounded or killed on that particular day. And it wasn't until afterwards when you stopped and you started to defend the woods you were in, and you looked back and you saw your mates there and saw them wounded so badly and some of them killed, that it really hit you and really went home to you.
Across the River Orne, the men from 1st Battalion were waiting for orders to advance. Within hours, it turned into a day that the young soldiers would never forget.
On the morning of the 7th of June, we were lying at Longaville, and we were supposed to start, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, we were supposed to do an attack. But the attack was held up until midday, until the naval guns and the Canadian artillery was supporting us. We were told by intelligence that the enemy was light in St. Honorn. At 12 o'clock, we were given the order to advance. As we went up the cornfield, there was a little hill there, and as soon as we got over the top of it to go down into the dip, we seen what we thought was a fence in front of us, but this fence started moving back. We thought we were seeing things. Then the guns started shelling, our guns. The Germans were firing from St. Honorn, the Navy was firing from the sea, and the Canadians were firing below us on the other side of the river. and they were hitting us, and we were caught in an arc of fire where we couldn't move forward, back, sideways.
It's different, your enemy, when you're in Kennedy, when it comes to some of our regiment, they might have had a bit of gumption.
We were pinned down with heavy fire. We had to pull back. We couldn't have held the position. All we were doing was getting casualties and nothing in return.
For the men, the casualties were not only fellow soldiers, but sometimes best friends.
In the morning of the attack on St. Honoran, there was a friend of mine who went to school with Bobby Stevenson. Bobby went to 1st Battalion at the same time as I did, from the Young Soldiers Battalion. On the advance, Bobby Stevenson shouted at me, he said, "Bill, I'll see you afterwards." But I happened to turn around and there was a shell, 88mm. And he was blown to pieces. Now, there wasn't a senior officer near him when this happens. There must be a senior officer present to say that the man has been killed. There wasn't even his bootlaces.
Some of your comrades not get hit or get killed. You're sorry and that, and you feel wrong, but you can't let it get you down. You can't just let it get you down, you know.
We were cut off for a few days, and things were not very good.
I wonder a lot of shells not there, and how would you call it? They call them the monominis. They're more or less like blasts.
You used to hear the monomini. It was a mortar which fired, I think it was 5. It went bump, 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 and then a wee pause, and then bump.
Dreadful, really, really dreadful. There's no doubt about it, you know. And you always saying maybe the next one's for me, sort of thing. But it was scary. It's very, very scary, you know. So it was, because they really pumped the shells in, you know, really did.
For the men cut off in Longueval, the effects of war were beginning to take their toll.
When you move in to bury dead people, wounded, grotesque horrors, you can't describe the horror. Words won't describe them. Even paintings won't describe them. And it just beggars description, really. War is grotesque. We could never describe the horrors of war to any one particular person. Couldn't aptly describe them. Oh, I could go into details there, lurid details. The physical damage, the mental damage. You couldn't describe it.
For 5 weeks, Caen, the so-called gateway to Paris, remained the Allies' objective. But only after a huge aerial bombardment was the heavily defended city finally liberated.
We saw these planes coming over our head, and we knew Caen about 3 miles away from where we were. Actually, you could see the bombs dropping in Caen, And with the guns and that, you could feel the ground shaking under her feet.
How in the name those people lived through that? The destruction going on the whole night long. And then it stopped after that, the daylight came, knowing we had to go into attack. And nobody knew what to expect going in there. The rubble was still all over the roads, no roads or nothing. You couldn't get it, you'd look at walking in them. It was really a bad mess, it was mad. The only thing was down was the church. That was the capital of Normandy. And we took the capital of Normandy. That was the first city in Europe to be liberated.
You knew that the people of France would be delighted to be liberated. People were so glad, so happy, you know, and showed their appreciation.
Everybody was pleased, the officers and everybody was pleased. Even they got from Montgomery himself. Although it took a long time, he says they achieved their objective, and it makes all the difference now that they were. That's all they wanted.
Not all the soldiers were fortunate enough to experience the joys of liberation. Badly injured on the battlefield, Stanley Burrows had already been sent back to England, reluctantly parted from his comrades and his best friend from Belfast.
I didn't want to go. They weren't severe burns like people would get out of these flamethrowers. And I thought it'd be all right if I stayed the night and stay along with my old pal, Crangles. Crangles was one of the best chums I ever had. We got on terrible well together. We were through all the scripts and things that you got through in army life together. The boys that bullied and the boys that didn't. And we looked after each other and watched over each other's shoulders for one another in that way that good comrades do within the forces. When I was in hospital, my mother had wrote to the medical staff to find out all about just what happened to me. And a letter arrived, and in it she told me then that Crangles had been killed. And that was very, very sad to me to hear that. Here's somebody you've soldiered with for all these years, and now he's killed, and I wondered just what happened, the way it happened. And that's one of the reasons I was anxious to get back, to see if I could get any details about where he was and where he was buried and all the rest. When I went back and I saw the beautiful graves and the way they were looked after, a big burden had left me. And here I was saying now, I saw Crangle's grave, and I tell you, I shed a tear or two. Excuse me, I felt it very much. It touched me. It does, even now to talk about it. It touched me. He was a dear pal who meant the world to me. When I go back, it makes me live it all over again. It all comes back to you, but you can't help feeling it. It's just there with you, and I think you'll go to the grave with it. It'll always be something that you'll remember all your life.
I've asked that my ashes be scattered in Bramwell Cemetery beside the Airborne Cross. That's one of my wishes. I think I belong there with the boys that I would know. I can still see faces of people there as I knew them before they were killed. The arching at the cemetery in Bayeux is for the people who are still missing. A lot of them we know to be killed, which, except there was a senior officer present, is still down as missing in action. It's Bobby Stevenson's name on that. I can still see him, even though it's only on the name on the wall. He's still there with me. Times was, you have to shake your head and sometimes try to forget about it. You can't, I can't. I don't think I ever will do. Just one of them things. The people of Longfell are very great with the Ulster Rifles. Longfell was a place which we relieved on the 7th of June. And that's why we put the memorial there. Like the 2nd Battalion laid on the Common Plain on the 7th to 9th of June. And that's why we put the memorial there as well for the 2nd Battalion.
You know the old saying, they give there today for your tomorrow? That's very, very true. Very, very true. And people want to remember that.
This is something that happened, that if the world had been a better place, wouldn't have happened. But when it did happen, and the men went out and fought for what was right, then it was worthwhile. Even though killed, wounded, lost limbs and all the rest of it, it was, at the bitter end, worthwhile, because it sort of made a better place for us to live in.